What happens when one of the largest empires on Earth sends its last hope across the world? But the men inside the ships are exhausted conscripts, terrified sailors, and peasants who had barely seen the ocean before. If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to subscribe. In 1905, Russia sent a fleet on an impossible mission: sail halfway around the world, reach Japan, save the war. Against all odds, they survived the journey. But waiting for them in the waters of Tsushima was Admiral Togo, and he was about to turn Russia's last hope into one of the most humiliating defeats in military history. By the late 1800s, the world was being carved up by empires. Britain, France, Germany, and the other European powers were claiming land across the globe. Colonies, ports, resources, influence, everyone wanted more. Russia was no different. But while other empires sailed across oceans, Russia pushed east, across Siberia, toward China, toward Korea, toward the Pacific. And by the time Nicholas II became Tsar, Russia controlled one of the largest land empires the world had ever seen. But Nicholas wanted something Russia still didn't have: a warm water port, a place where Russian ships could operate all year round. And one of the most valuable ports in Asia was Port Arthur. There was just one problem: Japan wanted it too. Japan had spent decades transforming itself from an isolated island nation into a modern industrial power. It had built a new army, a new navy, a new empire. And after defeating China in 1894, Japan claimed Port Arthur as part of its victory. Then Russia stepped in. Backed by other European powers, Russia forced Japan to give the port back, and soon after, Russia took it for itself. To Japan, it was an insult. To Russia, it was just empire. And that was the mistake, because Japan was no longer the isolated country Europe remembered. It had watched the West dominate the world for decades. It had studied their armies, copied their ships, rebuilt its government, and transformed itself into something completely new. Japan did not just want land, it wanted respect. And if Russia would not give it willingly, Japan was ready to take it by force. Japan tried diplomacy first. The Japanese government sent diplomats to St. Petersburg, hoping to avoid war and settle the growing tension over Manchuria and Korea. But Tsar Nicholas II did not take Japan seriously. To him, Russia was a European giant. Japan was a small island nation that should know its place. That arrogance would become one of Russia's greatest mistakes. On the night of February 8, 1904, Japan made its move. Without waiting for a formal declaration of war, Admiral Heihachi Togo led a surprise attack against the Russian fleet at Port Arthur. The attack did not destroy the Russian navy, but it shocked the empire. A modern Asian power had struck first against one of Europe's great giants. The war had begun. On land, Japan moved quickly. Its armies landed through Korea and pushed into Manchuria, where Russian forces were still trying to hold their ground. At the Battle of the Yalu River, the Russians were stunned by the speed and discipline of the Japanese army. They had expected weakness. Instead, they found soldiers who were organized, aggressive, and ready to fight. Meanwhile, at sea, Togo kept pressure on the Russian Pacific Fleet. Port Arthur became trapped between the Japanese Navy outside the harbor and the Japanese army closing in from land. Russia still believed it could recover. It still had men, ships, and one enormous advantage: time. Reinforcements could be sent east, and the empire could absorb losses that Japan could not. But Japan knew something Russia did not fully understand yet. This war had to be won quickly or not at all. With Port Arthur under pressure, Russia made one desperate decision. If the fleet in Asia could not win the war, then another fleet would have to sail there. So the Baltic Fleet was renamed the Second Pacific Fleet and ordered to leave Europe for Japan. It sounds simple. It was not. The journey was around 18,000 miles. The ships were old, the crews were exhausted, and many of the men on board were conscripts with almost no experience at sea. Some were peasants who had barely seen the ocean before. Now, they were expected to cross the world and fight one of the most disciplined navies alive. The voyage became a nightmare. The men were nervous before they had even reached open war. Every shadow on the water looked like an enemy. Every strange light became a possible attack. Rumors moved faster than orders, and fear spread from ship to ship like fire. These were not battle-hardened sailors ready for a clean naval duel. They were tired men trapped inside steel ships, sailing farther from home every day toward an enemy many of them barely understood. The men panicked at shadows. They mistook fishing boats for Japanese torpedo boats. Training exercises turned into chaos. Discipline broke down again and again. But somehow, they made it. After months at sea, the Russian fleet reached the waters near Japan. They had survived storms, fear, confusion, and their own incompetence. But the real nightmare was still ahead. Admiral Togo was waiting in the Tsushima Strait. On May 27, 1905, the Russian fleet entered the strait, trying to reach Vladivostok. Rozhestvensky did not want a decisive battle. His men were exhausted and his ships had already crossed half the world. Togo wanted the opposite. He moved to intercept them. By early afternoon, the two fleets could see each other. The Russians opened fire first, and for a brief moment, they actually hit Togo's flagship, the Makisa. For a moment, it looked like Russia still had a chance. Then Togo made his move. He turned his ships across the front of the Russian line in a maneuver known as crossing the T. Every major Japanese gun now had a clear shot. The Russians did not. Then the Japanese opened fire. Shells tore through the Russian ships. Decks exploded. Smoke covered the sea. Ships fell out of formation, burning and broken. Rozhestvensky's flagship was hit again and again, and he was badly wounded. By sunset, the Russian fleet was no longer a fleet. It was wreckage trying to escape. That night, Japanese torpedo boats hunted down the survivors. By morning, the remaining Russian ships were surrounded. Some tried to surrender, but even that turned into confusion. Their signals were misunderstood, and the firing continued until the message was finally clear. The result shocked the world. Only a few Russian ships reached Vladivostok. Most were sunk, captured, or destroyed. Japan lost only a few small torpedo boats. Russia had sent its last hope across the world. Japan erased it in a single battle. Tsushima was more than a naval defeat. It was the moment the world realized European empires were not untouchable. Russia had size, history, power. A massive empire stretching across continents, Japan had discipline, speed, and Admiral Togo. For Russia, the defeat was humiliating. Its last hope had crossed half the world, survived months of fear and chaos, and then disappeared in a single battle. For Japan, it was proof that it could stand beside the great powers, proof that it could defeat them. The Russian fleet survived the impossible journey, but it did not survive him.